One of the things that I keep hearing though from being out there is the need for some people to say all Black Lives Matter or Black Trans Lives Matter. People feel the need to say that and include that. I guess, for people who don't understand, why are we seeing those signs and those chants to make sure that all Black people are included in Black Lives Matter, or that make sure that Black trans people are included in that?
Okay. Because I've had so many, that pisses me off when people say like, can't you just generalize it? No, that's like saying people of color all the time. Like, no, Black, like you have to be specific. That's why like the term say her name, the hashtag say her name became a thing, because people were not paying attention to Black women being abused by, being hurt by state violence or being killed by state violence. Like, you have to be specific. Those things have to be said. Those things need to be brought attention to. Like, you can't always just say all Black lives matter. Like, yes, we know, but like certain groups need more attention. Like, or certain groups need specific needs. So like, you can't just give everybody, like, you can't pick everything from the same pot and give it to everybody, because everybody doesn't need that. Everybody is not going to be able to sustain off that. Like, if it's just like ham sandwiches for everybody, like, what if I don't eat ham? Like, I need turkey. Like, I need something else. So you can't just generalize that. Like, I really not like that. You cannot generalize, but I get the inclusionary part of it, like, just to be broad in general and things like that. But when you get down to the nitty gritty and you start to like try to create legislation or policy, or like you want to, root for certain people, like, you have to be specific, especially since certain groups are in more harm than others. Like, people like don't want to pay attention to that, because it's like, we're all being hurt, but like, that's true. But like, but Black trans women though, like, they need more support, like right now. Like, it's okay to say that. And like, I feel some people be like, we don't want to say that because it takes away attention from other people. Like, no, it doesn't. Like, all Black lives still matter, but like, you need to be like realistic. Like, certain people do need more attention than others.
There's also the idea of like not wanting to air the community's dirty laundry, right? Like, we are all trying to stand together right now and say Black Lives Matter. And so in saying Black Lives Matter, maybe we shouldn't show videos of Black men accosting Black trans women, because that's just demonstrating violence in the community, right? But that's such bullshit, because it's happening and it needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed now, right? To go off of Jada's point, there seems to be this notion that right now we can say Black Lives Matter, and then once everybody thinks that Black Lives Matter, we can deal with the rest of it later. We just need everybody on the same page for Black lives, and then we can get everybody else on the individual pages. We can do that later. But we know that that's not going to work. Like, we know that that's not going to work because we tried this before. We tried this with respectability politics, right? We tried this by telling everybody if you wore your hair a certain way and you did this a certain way, then the white people would like you. And that's not what happened, right? And so since we have that history already and we know that that's not going to work, I am on the same page of Jada. Like, we are not going to wait to have this conversation later. We are not going to not talk about these things for the sake of some fake unity. We're going to talk about all of this right now. And we're going to get to the place that we're going to together. We're not going to get there with only Black cis men in the front. We're going to all get there together.
I think also those arguments totally delegitimize the folks who started the BLM movement, which is Black and queer and gender nonconforming folk. And that just drives me freaking batty, often and all the time. It's just like, because we make Black synonymous with male, right? And we make civil rights synonymous with Black male civil rights, that we invisibilize the myriad of people who are impacted by structural racism and institutional racism. And it completely invisibilizes the folks who actually started this movement. And just to bring it back to the sort of beginning of the conversation, nothing exists within a vacuum. Every movement happens at the same time. And all of the people who are involved are learning from each facet of the movement, and we have to be specific. The only way that we can actually make something work is if we're being specific in our asks for everybody.
And I would echo all of that, and also just say that these are also conversations that have been happening for decades. Like even in the civil rights movement, when we talk about the Black civil rights movement, Bayard Rustin was still struggling with being a queer person in that movement and whether or not his identity, his whole self, could show up and be visible in that movement. And so I think this whole conversation is about like recognizing that there are certain identities who are not necessarily as welcomed and accepted and valued in a movement. And it's been that way for a while. And it's definitely something that we need to address by really being specific about the fact that, as has been mentioned, like we need to put more attention on some of the parts of our community.
And I like that specifically you bring up Bayard Rustin, because that is probably, there are a lot of reasons that this doesn't feel different for me. And I have to work on like not letting that cynicism creep in, because I'm in my mid-30s now, and when you're in your mid-30s and you can think back 15 years ago and remember fighting for the same thing, it gets frustrating, and it starts to not feel different, right? It starts to feel like, shit, we're here again. But then you take a step back and you remember that, like Sultan just said, Bayard Rustin struggled with this and struggled with whether or not he could be at the forefront of this movement. And now queer men, at the very least, are not having this struggle, right? Are not having this question. Queer men are at the forefront of this. Now let's work on getting some other folks besides the men. But the idea that queer folks are not sort of cowering in the corner and not having their contributions erased from this movement is what feels different this time to me.